12:16 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on Channel Africa Radio from an African perspective. Well, we have in studio, but before I get to that point, we look at the year 2024. Channel Africa's listeners being taken to different parts of the continent, bringing you compelling African stories in terms of our reporters and correspondents. Now, Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe is joining me live in studio just for a recap of some of the big stories that he followed along this year that made the headlines. Michael, good afternoon, and it's always a pleasure having you in studio. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Lulu. It's a pleasure to be in studio, and as usual, we always, discuss a lot of issues whenever we are in the studio.
Yeah, no. So now let's start with, the Ethiopia AU summit. This is where I think the big one for you was in terms of your reporting, and I remember you talking about walking in some mountainous area because of the security of Paul Kagame.
Yeah, no, that was Rwanda, but for Ethiopia, this was at the 44th AU summit in February in Addis Ababa, which was overshadowed by two incidents. One, the tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia, which escalated over the allegations by Somalia's president, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, that Ethiopian security forces tried to bar him from attending the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa. So the incident came amid a dispute between the countries involving the breakaway region of Somaliland. And speaking to journalists before cutting short his trip, the Somali president said the actions of these Ethiopian forces were part of a grand scheme by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to annex part of Somalia. So I caught what he said this morning when I prepared myself to attend the closing session of the summit. The Ethiopian security blocked my way, close quote. So yeah, Mahabut, adding to that, he said that they didn't allow him to come out of his hotel and then to go to the cars where he was supposed to be transported to the AU summit headquarters with his entourage. So yeah, he said that this was a deliberate attempt by Ethiopia to disrespect the African Union Summit participants like Somalia. So the claims by Mahmoud escalated tensions that were already running high because of the agreement signed New Year's Day between Abiy and Somaliland President Musi Bihi. So the memorandum of understanding that would grant landlocked Ethiopia access to the Gulf of Aden to build a naval base. In exchange, according to Somaliland, Ethiopia would recognize it as an independent state. So Ethiopia, however, said it would merely consider that as a possibility. Now, Somalia will still consider Somaliland considers Somaliland as part of its territory. Is insisting the agreement be cancelled. Moving in today, Ethiopia and Somalia have a long history of tensions and have even gone to war with each other. And however, in recent years, the two countries have enjoyed relatively friendly relations. Ethiopia currently deploys its troops into Somalia outside the African Union framework. Recent development is that Ethiopia and Somalia have now agreed to end their bitter dispute over Addis Ababa's plans to build a port in the breakaway Republic of Somaliland following talks in Turkey, which were facilitated by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan last Wednesday. So Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Somalia President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud both agreed to respect one another's sovereignty. And then the second one, Lulu, was the tension between DRC and Rwanda, where both nations attended the summit. And then the expectations were that the heads of states will convene a special sitting to bring the two leaders together in one table and try to resolve their issues through dialogue and negotiation under the leadership of Angola, who is a mediator in this conflict, as we know what is happening in the eastern and northern part of DRC. So, but unfortunately, that expectation never materialized, and the AU was criticized.
The AU has been criticized for a very long time because seemingly there isn't much that they can do. I remember we spoke to, I just can't remember the professor's name top of mind, but we spoke of the fact that he mentioned the fact that because of how the constitution of the AU Commission and how it was set up. It would have to be redrawn and going back to basics to redo everything in terms of the constitution if the AU is given the power to make decisions when it comes to countries and how they deal, whether it's coups and coup attempts and so on. So there is an issue there that needs to be looked at, especially on the African continent, where Africans are saying we want to solve our own issues, but seemingly the AU, for instance, or the SADC or in ECOWAS or in any other region, they don't really have the teeth to make decisions and move into a country and do things differently.
Indeed, Lulu, you are spot on in terms of how the AU is handling, the affairs of Africa.
Yeah.
They've often been, criticized for not, really biting and taking those, decisions to ensure that. Look at Sudan. I mean, we are talking for how long? 60 years of conflict, but the AU hasn't done much to that effect. So, but and as you said, that these leaders were supposed to meet on the 15th of December.
Yes, just a few days. And I remember speaking to Dr. Matanga, and his response was, "Let's see if this is going to happen," because we've seen postponements, and lo and behold, there was a postponement.
Yeah, and really, because everybody was looking forward to, seeing these leaders come together under, of course, the stewardship of Joao Lourenço, the president of Angola, who is mediating this particular, what they're calling it, the Luanda process. Yeah, so we don't know what will happen after this postponement. We're just hoping that, these two conflicting parties will, find their senses and then ensure that a peace is established in that region of the African.
Michael?
Yes.
Let's look at South Africa. What is the big story to come out of South Africa? I think I know, but I'll let you tell us.
Absolutely. Well, South Africa, the biggest one was, the demise, of the African National Congress Party, who lost its outright majority for the first time in a devastating blow for the party once led by Nelson Mandela. So the ANC has dominated South Africa's politics since winning its first post-apartheid elections 30 years ago. The ANC was pressed for a disappointing outcome predicted by polls before Wednesday's 29 May elections. But the final results were even more sobering. It won 40% of the vote, failing from 57% in 2019, a historical result that diminished the ANC's 3 decades hold on power. It was an important watershed moment that fundamentally changes politics in South Africa. So according to the constitution, the party with the largest vote has 2 weeks from the result confirmation to form a new government. So the ANC had now to form a coalition government with one or more opposition parties for the first time to remain in power. What happened? The formation of the government of national unity, which some of the ANC allies, like your South African Communist Party, is totally rejecting it. Surprise, surprise, the market have welcomed it. So South Africa remains one of the most unequal countries in the world, with 32% unemployed, along with soaring levels of crime. Immense frustrations with water and electricity shortages, as well as corruption, have led to growing criticisms of the government. So controversially, the convicted former ANC leaders, new party, the Inkondo Wesizwe party, was the story of the election. MK was named after the disbanded military wing of the ANC and registered just 6 months ago. It was just registered 6 months before the elections. But it made, a huge stride in terms of, mobilizing and then be able to have that support, where they ended up being, after these elections, overtaking the EFF on the third position.
The third opposition
Yes,
party, yeah.
Yes. So it was a huge change in terms of the political posture in South Africa.
And we've seen that happening with other liberation movements. For instance, in Namibia, long-standing parties in Botswana. Losing the majority or declining. We saw the president of the former president of Botswana, Masisi, having to concede that they've lost and the new presidency has taken over. And this now was different because now we saw the former president, Ian Khama, returning to the country. And I remember speaking to him, and I will never forget how he told us that he had been crisscrossing the country and had 82 campaigns that he had attended just to make sure that Masisi does not return to power. So a lot has happened.
A lot has happened.
SWAPO, the same thing in terms of numbers. There has been a slight decline, which we've seen before, and this is what's happening with liberation movements on the continent.
Yeah,
well, except Zimbabwe.
That is what happened as well to the ANC. They were being eaten slowly, election after election, local election after election, and the signs were there, but because of the factions. If you look at the parties that have been formed, out of the ANC. Starting with the UTM, you have your EFF, you have your COPE, and now yes. So it tells you how powerful the ANC was. If these parties were not formed out of that, we should have been, talking something different. But I wanted to touch on Rwanda. Before we wrap, yes, where the incumbent President Paul Kagame smashed his own record by winning 15th May elections with more than 99% of the vote. That's when we take everything provisionally, and then add together. So the 60-year-old won the 2017 election with 98.63% of the vote, higher than the 93% he got in 2010. So he's a man of the 90s, distinctions.
So, I remember we spoke about that, and the fact that people it's FOMO. The fear of missing out, or the fear of the unknown.
Yes,
so to speak, in terms of voting for a different candidate. And we were told that you actually told us, you were on the ground there in Rwanda, and talking about how people were not really sure what the opposition candidates were bringing to the table, because they were limited as well.
Of course. If you look at the track record, in 2017, the opposition leaders, or Frank Habineza of the Green Party and the independent Philippine Paimana, in 2017, they got a combined vote result of 1%. On this one, each one got 0.53%, and the other one got 0.32%. I mean, it tells you. And then even the voter turnaround was remarkable with 90%. The people, heeded the call. And then you also, when I arrived, we had also a discussion about how the people conducted themselves. It was a very wonderful experience for us as well as foreign journalists. There were these fears of saying, African journalists, what are they coming to do there, spies and whatnot? But everything was smooth.
But
we
also
did our work.
Security measures that were implemented. I mean, walking up a mountainous area just
Indeed,
to get
with snipers all over.
Just for you to get
very
a story, to report to us. But because now he's addressing the nation.
Indeed, it was intimidating, but we composed ourselves, and we didn't show any sign of fear of. We went there to do our work, and we managed, to execute the mandate.
Yeah. But Michael, before we wrap up, the big story also, speaking of old revolutionary parties, political parties, the African National Congress, the repatriation of remains of freedom fighters from Zimbabwe and Zambia. That was big.
It is. It was big because this happened as South Africa commemorated 30 years of freedom and democracy. So the government, led by the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Angie Motshekga, received the remains of about 49 former liberation fighters who passed away in exile in Zimbabwe and Zambia at Waterkloof Air Force Base in Pretoria on the 25th of September. And then on the 27th of September at Freedom Park, the government hosted an official homecoming ceremony where the President of the Republic, Cyril Ramaphosa, officiated. But now, just to look at the events that took place there, the emotions of the families, and then also how the military conducted themselves. The whole ceremony was very beautiful. It was something that, you know, brought some smiles into, you know, these families who were,
Closure.
of course. And yeah, it was very good. The government really did a very good, commendable job in terms of, you know, collaborating with these nations in terms of bringing these people to South Africa.
Well, Michael, Tracy's waving her hands. Time is up.
We have to, Tracy,
We
keep
have
me
to
out.
wrap up.
Thank you so much. Right.
Oh, thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
joining
having
me
me.
in studio, and
Pleasure.
it's been a pleasure. That is our reporter, Michael Mbewe, who is joining me in studio live and just unpacking some of the big stories that came out from the continent this year, 2024. Our news headlines up next with Nosihle Zuma.